till my Welcome to Speak Sex. I'm your host, Eurydice, and my guest today is Nana Kwame Adjei-Brenyah. He's a great writer, novelist, and short story writer, and he just turned 30, right, Nana?
Yes, now.
So yeah, sweet. So I love that too. A couple of things about you. You are the son of immigrants from Ghana. And you were, I guess, born and grew up in New York, somewhere upstate, went to SUNY Albany, got your MFA at Syracuse, and your book, Friday Black, did very well. It's considered the bestseller, and it won the Breakwater Review Fiction Contest and got the Penn Genstein Book Award, and you were selected as one of National Book Foundation's 5 under 35 authors by Colson Whitehead. So congrats for all of that. And you've been working on your novel or finished your novel during quarantine, right?
Yeah. First, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here talking to you right now. And yeah, I did somehow finish a novel during this sort of bleak year. Very recently, I have a draft anyways. So finished is a complicated term, but I have at least, it's almost like I have a starting place, really.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's never finished. That's why we keep writing, right? It's one unending, text.
Never.
Or incantation.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, what I do like about your work, for myself, that there are all kinds of interesting aspects to it, and people should read it, because there's so much to it. But for me, I'm a first-generation immigrant too, so I recognize the language that's English, and the grammar that's correct, but it still contains echoes of like the old languages, from the old land, and so I hear that in it. I hear the rhythm, of like how our people kind of chant more.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because English is like such a business language, and the languages that we come from, that of an oral tradition, the stories we grew up on are very much languages of like echo and rhythm and like the pulse, right, the blood beating. Yeah, so I love the sound, the sentence structure and kind of like the sound of the language. I like that you just, like me and like the writers whose work I personally enjoy most, try to write down the body, write the flesh and, bridge that gap between the mind and the body that, like, I think the patriarchy, keeps insisting on. And then also, write what we're scared to say, like write exactly what, what's unspeakable or like was considered unspeakable, right? So, so like writing is an exorcism a little bit.
Yeah. I feel that for sure.
Yeah.
It's definitely a magic. You said incantation earlier. There's a kind of exorcism. It's a way, literally, you can excise some of those things that are part of yourself and part of your world in a way that I don't know, has a lot of power for me at least. So I that resonates with me for sure.
Yeah. And also you're not like very genre specific, which I appreciate. It's kind of hard to put the book in a category. So we call it a short story collection, and but that's a euphemism. Like you have like a moment here, then a story, but then also just like, a moment in time or a thought or a dream.
I'm really, the idea of genre, it comes up with me a lot because of exactly what you just said. This book is not easy to put into a category. And because of that, I actually struggled for a long time trying to categorize myself artistically in terms of writing. Do I do this or that? Am I this kind of writer or that kind of writer? And I feel very grateful to some of my mentors like George Saunders, who would just like, when I would come to him like, George, do I do this or that? He was just like, yes, And it was a really important sort of generosity he gave me, because it reminds me that our tendency to categorize, it's like this weird fear we have. We have this like fear of like, if we can't label this exactly how we want to, it somehow escaped us or may hurt us, or is like we haven't done our due diligence. But I think oftentimes like the process of categorizing or labeling is inherently reductive. You know, we're right away like squeezing into it a box that it never asked to be in.
Right. And also, like, that's not the creative impulse. I think it's kind of like anti-artistic. You know, it makes sense like for the corporate world and like Googleification, and maybe like if writing, to some people means coding, maybe for coders, but like it doesn't make sense for the process of creation, which comes from chaos.
If you're an artist, part of the whole point of the art for me is like you're getting your essential essence out through the medium. So the genre of the art you make is Eurydice. Like to me, like that's like the genre. The genre of my work is like not.
I agreed. Yeah. Sweet. Yeah. And we get to do it, and that's another thing I love about you. That you don't mind like going from one medium to another. I mean, it's all the same voice. Whether it's like a song or a drawing or I kind of like run against that resistance a lot in my career. I still do. It's like, are you an artist? Are you a writer? Are you a speaker? Are you a scholar? I'm like,
yeah,
whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like it's like, is it a job interview or are we talking about art? And I think we all struggle with that, because I love photography. I love like filmmaking. I hesitate to call myself a photographer or a filmmaker because I don't know, because I haven't done whatever. I don't know. And even being a writer, it's like it's a scary thing. But when I tell my students, if you write, you're a writer. If you're making something, you're serving the story. If you're doing that, if you're taking the chance and being vulnerable across whatever medium, to me, that's it. And that's what it's about. Not like figuring out your sort of like category, because it doesn't know I don't know what that serves. Even some of these like genres and labels, I'm not against them. I think they do apply to me. But okay, I write sci-fi. Like, so what? It's not going to inform my process in any way.
Right. Exactly.
I write this or that. Okay. It doesn't feel like it's for me. So I don't, to me, it's just not really, it's not important to the process of actually making. It seems more like after the fact appraisal for selling purposes.
Right. It seems exactly. It's just like all about the selling of it. And I don't know, there is a big part of it, in my opinion, that's like the man, it's the man telling us who we are. So until like the man says, you wrote a book and a legitimate publisher spent, a few dollars like printing it and, distributing it, that makes you a writer. Otherwise it's not, or like a gallery, or a few galleries like have sold some of your art, so you're an artist. Otherwise you're not, But like it's really so arbitrary, I think, because it's so easy nowadays, like the patriarchs are dead. I'm sorry, like the system keeps going of its own momentum, but like, truth doesn't exist the way it used to. We don't all get our beliefs from this like one centralized like authority anyway, right?
Yes.
So like, why is it still up to the the powers that be to give us the stamp of approval? That's what we are, because they monetized our work a little.
I think about it so much, and like, don't even get me going down this path, because I like talk about it forever. But like, it's what's scary is even our ability to consume, and consume is not even the best word, because that's what we do only, but like appreciate like art is informed by this kind of patriarchal sort of kind of arbitrary system. Okay, this book is 3.7 stars. Like what? What does that mean? Like what could that
Yeah,
mean?
I know. And then like
It's
you get one extra review or two and the stars change. And you're like, the metrics are so ridiculous.
and again, like I don't think like there is no use for criticism or like thinking about work at a high level. I think that's actually a great honor. But I think the tools we have to do it so it's easily so that criticism can also be easily consumed are so reductive. Even asking, like I had this moment when I was reading a great book called Afterbirth, and I'm trying to think of the author's name. It's like escaping me right now, but it was a beautiful, spectacular book in my opinion. But I remember having that, like you finish a book and I felt my brain go, "How good was this book? Or was this good or bad?" And I'm like, of all the like soul and humanity that was exhibited in those pages, that is it's so disrespectful almost, or like limiting or just whack to think of it like good, bad, thumbs up, thumbs down. It's like, no, someone's like, here's my whole heart, my essential humanity. And I'm like trying to be like, well, I'll give that about 4.2 stars. It's insane. It feels insane to me. So I kind of resist a lot of it. Like I want us to like, I don't know, to me it just feels like not what art should be. It's like feels like art trying to be like these other spaces, what it's supposed to, in my mind, like particularly not be.
Yeah, I feel you. I agree so much. Yeah. Because anyway, we're supposed to be the avant-garde. We're supposed to be moving forward to a place that cannot be graded or categorized or explained, right? We're supposed to be opening up ground in our evolution, in our like collective move, all of us together as humans. So how can all of that be put in categories in advance? It can't. It's just like instead they're putting the brakes on us. They're like, nah, slow down, belong.
It's so true, and it ends up being like you don't have to like imagine very far to see how it can be detrimental to the process. So obviously, as I say this, I'm not anti getting awards. I'm very grateful. It's a big honor, but you create this system where you can get further legitimized by further award winning, right?
Yeah.
And because of the way we view those awards, and I think we're starting to change. I think people are starting to understand like it's obviously extremely arbitrary, but in some people's minds, these awards are like, that's better than this because they won an award and they didn't. And it's a way to get the majority actually of artists to feel less than, because there's only so many awards.
Yeah.
And obviously, I guess like the other sister half is if you are lucky enough, like obviously we've been very blessed on my team and my publishing house, and with my first book, we've gotten very lucky in the sense that we've gotten some of these honors, which I'm super grateful for. But like, it doesn't mean that in any way that my book is like a better book of that year. It's one person who tried, and I say this to someone who like cares a lot about putting like intense effort into their craft, but it's not like we're not trying to just be like this hierarchical system. We're trying to, like you said, be avant-garde and almost like remind ourselves that the illusion of this me above here and you here, that's like not us. That's not real life.
Yeah. Exactly. That's not our intention. So our intention gets like deformed in the process of, being like, consumed. Of entering the machine, the production machine. Yeah. And that's that's problematic. And I think that there is no exception to this. Once you succeed in something, however, minimal that success is, then the cogs in the wheel around you want you to keep repeating that thing, right?
Yeah.
So, reiterating what has already been said, which is really not that useful to you in your work or to your, readers or listeners or followers or, those who love you, right? That's what they want you to do, and then they will pay you for it the most. And they will they're not like interested in something completely different coming from you, because they can't quite predict if that will do as well, A. And also there is that inherent bias that you're just not going to be good in more than one or two media, Like you can be an actor and we will, excuse you for writing a book and talk about it, but like, you're not a good writer. No one's going to read you, right? That's the prejudice, You can be a great musician, but then you can also write books. Come on, like it's an inherent prejudice that exists in our consumption system. That I think we all need to break down. Like we need to break out of it and get our freedom, our creative freedom back.
I love it. I'm like nodding my head because, like, yeah, it's really true, and I think part of it has to do with the sense that our general sort of the in its heart, capitalism is set up so that even one artistic medium, you're not really supposed to be able to sustain over even one. It's not really supposed to be a choice. So we've been trained to think that if you can do two, it's impossible. Because you're really not even supposed to be able to do the one. What you're supposed to do is sell your labor power traditionally to the machine in a way that takes up your 9 to 5 of your life.
Yes.
If you like escaped that, it's already like such a privilege that we're like, it's almost like that's the whole celebrity thing. We want to elevate you to this weird status, which is again problematic. But if you've somehow escaped, in quotes, because you can't fully escape it, but escaped that, it's already like impossible. And then, so once you say you want to do that again, the public almost like has this knee jerk about it, because you weren't really supposed to do it in the first one. That was already like, we already gave you the benefit of like escaping once.
Right. You're not following the rules.
And I tried it again.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you break the rules, like we don't want to know about you, like you become an outlier.
And the most dangerous part is like, it's internalized.
Yeah.
That's my thing. Like I was saying, I think I logically justify my belief about my unwillingness to identify as like a practitioner of those other art forms or mediums because of like a reverence for that thing. I don't want to like take it lightly. But I tell my students all the time, if you write, you're a writer. So why can't I tell myself, if you take pictures, you're a photographer?
Yes, you are. And I'm here to tell you are.
But I've internalized, and that's why I've internalized this kind of, I'm already like getting away with something by getting to be a writer. Because again, my parents are African immigrants. Like that wasn't a thing in their mind at all. The joke I used to tell on tour was, I finally figured out how to get my very immigrant parents to co-sign my artistic career. And then the punchline was, all I had to do was get a profile in the New York Times. And
yeah.
It's a joke, but it was true.
Yeah. And my parents don't live here. They don't know the New York Times if they hit them on the head. They have never, I never gave permission to have my books translated in Greek, my native language. So they have the books in languages they don't read, which suits me well.
Perfect.
I know, right? The whole family knows, like the vague outline of it, but there is like no space for all the fucking criticism.
Ideal cheat code.
Yeah, exactly. So, but to me, it's like I came here on my own, at 15, specifically to like escape,
Wow.
And I thought long about whether to come here or like the Soviet Union, who was like my number 2, or, or like France, because my French was better than my English. English is like my 3rd language. So,
wow.
And my French literature, is more where I belong. And I chose America for this, anarchist aspect to it, because there is so much space and there is so much, diversity underground, right? Not in the shop windows, but, on the ground, that there was space for me to just keep reinventing myself and learning, through the people and the identities that I could keep taking on. And I just didn't want to be like my dad's daughter, and I did not want to continue that. That was really heavy and dark.
Yeah.
Gross.
Yeah.
Gross.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what a sort of impressive, or like, I mean, a kind of heroic impulse to have at that age, to sort of even be mulling over those choices in a way that actually happened. That's like incredible. It's incredible.
Yeah. So it was good because it was clearly foolhardy. I could have died like in Hollywood when I got off the plane, and it was like I'm here, not knowing anyone.
Yeah.
But it did like the risk inherent, has been helpful throughout in the sense of letting me out of the normal obligations. Like I'm always aware I am a foreigner wherever I am. I left too young. I'm a foreigner everywhere. I don't belong. The natives can go by the rules. They understand them. But
Right.
I need to have an escape plan. So having that like very formative in my psyche makes it easier for me to basically say no to the temptations of like success and like the promise of wealth, which like how much are we gonna make, honestly? Like the pittance.
That's really cool though, because that's a really deep freedom you've like sort of created for yourself. I love that.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. So I was, every time that I reach the place of success, I kind of like get out of it before I get completely caught, And in the process, each time I lost like my agent and my publisher, and I went to another country and I worked on another medium and started all over. And then when I get a new agent and a new, well, I did film, for example, and I get a production company and all of that, and everything's great. And then I reach a place where I have to like stay with it for my career. I jump out and like I move to Miami and I enter the competition for art space in like the main, stretch of the city where everybody walks for like a co-op art studio. I got it, having had like no career in art, except I had, it was like my double major as an undergrad. And then I spent like 7 years just making and selling art. People like hundreds of people walked in and creating that, So yeah, I just kind of like, I stand here as an example that it can be done, Like my film career started in India. So I had to go kind of far from New York to get from the writing to the film. But, it has taught me a lot and it has liberated me. And also, another thing that I want to say is that it has reinforced the sense that I always had that we writers need to get out of the, academic gates, where like knowledge is kept away from the world, and share it. It's okay to go back to it like when, we're older, maybe.
Yeah.
Don't have all the energy, but just like to be kept there because that's the main means of like providing, a consistent salary and healthcare. I think that's, too much of a compromise and it doesn't help the art. It really doesn't, because you don't get access to as much hardcore living. Yeah.
I'm so into what you're saying right now. I find that so inspiring because it's really true. That's another thing. Like it's first off, it's brave and courageous to take the initial leap. It's really, really different to like feel like to finally beat the game, so to speak. Oh, you made it. You become sustainable in this thing that's very difficult to even have a chance to do that. And then to leave that and do it again, and then do it again is like, wow, like that's so inspiring to me because, and if you have the option to do that, like it's been an interesting part of the journey for me. Excuse me, to have like to even be considered an artist in like outside of my own like head, because even in my own head it's like I try my best and that's what I do, but to have like this to be sort of quote unquote legitimized in this certain kind of energy it's different for me. And academia is very, very emotionally strange because of how academia is so inherently hierarchical and
Oh my God,
so
yeah.
they very often want to reduce stuff. I did the MFA, so they try to be separate, but it's still within the walls of that space. So and I love my MFA experience. I didn't have a negative one, but when you want to teach now, right? I
Oh
always
yeah,
think about,
yeah. I love my MFA experience. I went to Brown, loved
yeah,
every moment, was great. And then I stayed, as an assistant professor, and that was super generous of them, adjunct, of course, and then, but I was young, and I realized at some point there is no way I can spend my life in these corridors as much as I love the graduate students I get to teach. There was no way. This was not a life of the mind. I was too
no,
young. I
yeah,
Yeah.
and feeling like you and taking those leaps though, and it's hard because again, like there's like logistical realities that are bind you to spaces. Part of why I went so hard when I did, and then also even why I left Syracuse when I did was both because of my father's like health. Um, so like the system is so horrendous that it kind of tries to force you into its, again, selling your labor power or selling your particular, say you have whatever skill art form that is outside of the traditional trajectory. They're still trying to force you into like acting like you're working your regular job.
Yeah.
Because if you
Yeah.
don't, they'll be like, well, you're going to starve and die, or your parents will too. And so like,
Yeah.
it's been really interesting for me to like try to like keep that sort of sacred energy about my art, even as um, it's becoming more and more, I guess, extrinsically motivated because I know that there's like someone cares now, and so it's like a really hard balance. But I mean, to me, I try to focus on my artistic purposes, my what I think is connected to my general purpose, and have that sort of be in the front of my mind and the back of my mind, as opposed to like, will they like this? Am I gonna get this, that recognition or whatever? To me, trying to find that balance is really, that's why what you're saying to me is like so like mind blowing and awesome, because it's like kind of a dream that I think a lot of people aspire to. That's really hard to like manifest in real life. I don't know if you know many people like yourself. I'm sure not that many.
No, I don't. I don't. And I think that it's a matter of fear, and it's a matter of conversion therapy. I think that partly the system denies us the option to truly love, because when you love your dad, or if you have a kid, you love your kid, then even if you're willing to like give up your own security, you want to like get theirs. So that's a way, it gets you. And then this
Mm.
general assumption, that we have to work in order to live, which, I mean, I'm sure you have thought of, universal basic income and
Yeah, there's so many. It doesn't
universal
have to be this.
artist income. There could be all kinds of ways that, we could all get a basic income to live.
Yes.
Equitably, without it really making a big difference to the economy of this nation.
Yes.
And not have that sense in the back of your head that, well, maybe you'll starve, maybe you'll be
Even just universal health
homeless.
care.
Yeah,
Even just health care.
yeah,
Both
yes.
of those are necessary. Universal basic income and universal health care. Like,
That's right. That's right. Speaking of your dad, like not being unwell, like that immediately creates the fear. How many thousands of dollars of bills are coming our way, right? Yeah,
at any time. And
yeah,
so if you don't operate in this system that doesn't really serve anybody, like no one's like, I love it,
right.
but we all, it's really rough. But that's why like, and then so like the one way like some people try to do it is you make so much money, like you get basically, instead of escaping the game, you get so good at the game, you get to kind of ignore it a little bit, but at what cost to yourself and to your
Right,
own
but you
mental
lose
health.
your soul. Come on. I mean, Faust. I don't
Yeah,
think there is any way you keep your freedom, your authenticity while you're making a ton of money. Just that
yeah,
can happen. Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Mm.
But your parents and my parents come from a place, my island, I'm from the island of Lesbos, and my village where I was born, where both my parents were born, has the same name that it did in the Iliad, by Homer. And life hasn't really changed, and those those antiquities are still there from that long ago. So when you land there and you spend time, it's everything slows down, and really, like, there is no sense of what we know as work. People don't, because a lot of work is still agricultural, and it goes with the seasons, and people work the land, and they, eat what they produce and then trade or sell or give. So that's a different part of work. And it just kind of like opens up that connection to like working as part of nature without necessarily belonging, to like a production machine, a production system. And I read something recently that that resonated with me a lot, which was that we just don't, our accountants, our economy, the Fed, or whoever our economists are, they don't account for natural worth and for woman worth, So they don't account for the work of the mothers, the birthing, the bearing, the breastfeeding, any of that. And they don't pay that. But also they don't account for the value, the monetary value of like clean air, right? Like, trees, the environment, like that should be in the goddamn accounts. Whoever's keeping accounts, we're only valuing, like cutting down the trees and creating money out of a forest rather than the inherent value of like the forest, to exemplify it, or the ocean, right?
Wild. Like we created the system and then immediately became like a complete slave to it, like a complete slave to it. And it's funny, like when you don't account for motherhood or the air, it's like you don't account the thing that allows you to have, the machine, the thing that makes the machine go, your employees, even though obviously we are more than employees, but that's how they see us, how those people are created. They don't view that as valuable, which tells you something about it's almost like it's too obvious of a story or a joke or satirical thing. It's like too obvious, but like the way humans are created is not valued. And that's very clear in like so many aspects of policy around pregnancy and child rearing. But it just gets really like, it's just such a fine point to like the general idea of like, humanity not being valued outside of its ability to produce labor. But it's funny though, because being born is essential to producing labor. So even in its own weird way, it's still stupid.
And being able to like live, a long and productive life, right? Yeah. Like not be poisoned by smog or toxic water, that's important to the system.
But again, like there is I hadn't thought of it exactly this way until I went to South Africa the first time on book stuff. But like she was one of the person, she took us like a natural food tour of this part of Cape Town. It was really, really dope. And in their culture, they were kind of getting their connection to farming and like plot farming, like a farm outside your house. And thinking about how the forest doesn't need a gardener, but the forest maintains itself, and how dead leaves protect the topsoil. And it's a whole, obviously a pretty elegant system that we fuck up a lot. But anyways, she was like, when her grandmother was a child, like when someone's hungry, like there's always somebody cooking in their house. And if someone's hungry, you just go to if not your house, that house, if not that house, that house, that house, you get food. And how do you get food? Food is sourced by, you went out and got it earlier in the day. And now though, like it's like now even in South Africa, but obviously here too, if you're starving and hungry, it's like you're shit out of luck. You have to go beg for food maybe to get money, but not even food itself, but money. And the accessibility to clean air and food and clean water, if those things are all accessible, and housing, Like as then we wouldn't have to sell our labor power to this machine and do this thing that we don't like doing. No one likes doing it. So it and I wonder how much in these people's minds it's like a thing, but like it's almost we all agree to this terribly backwards system where you have to work the space is so toxic and the general person is so without ability that you have to sort of pay for the subscription services almost to survive. So you have to pay for this subscription service called the grocery store to get what food is. And that there's so many dangers besides the fact of what they're putting in the food, but also our relationship to food is inherently like just completely broken. I think like some people think steaks come from ShopRite. You know?
Yeah.
We have no connection to either animals or the plants that grow out of the ground, like none.
Yeah.
And so that's just one version of it. But like, we have no idea of how to, all these things that we can't make our own clothes. All these things that we've done. We live in comfort, but at the price of autonomy, basically.
Yeah, exactly. And, if we could collectivize, I mean, that's honestly, keeping us competing with each other, that's the whole mantra, right? That's what reality TV is about. That's what social media is about, who gets what, more attention, more this, numbers. So, but keeping us, focused on competing with each other about who has what, destroys our power to share, right? And trade. So if you don't have that, that emphasis on competition and you have the emphasis on collaboration, then what I'm good at making a lot of, I'll give you some and you give me some of what you can make a lot of. And we know we're going to survive, and we're all so different that we could do that in our little micro, cultures and figure it out and fine tune it. And that would be a great way to use the internet instead of how we use it now, for advertising of oneself and whatever.
Yeah, we have the ability to connect globally at all times. And on some level, it's happening though. Like, I mean, it's annoying that money is how it starts, right? Because cryptology is and decentralization of money is like, it's funny. I'm no authority to speak about this stuff, but that is an example of like a collective working outside the central space and be like, okay, we want to do it ourselves. And it's this other network where we can sort of not depend on the fiat system or like the central system and trade on our own. We have a standard through which trading can be done on our own terms outside of the sort of megalith boss guy. And that's one space, but I think it's coming. I hope so. I hope it's coming. It's also hard because, like you said, it's like an unlearning system. It's like a big program, and we have to unlearn so much. But if you're not given the tools,
you have to unlearn so much. I mean, they start us with competing in the family, for the parental approval or something, gift, something, and then we go to school and it's grades and sports and it nonstop is about who is better and how and so there is a lot of resistance and undoing that we have to be ready to do. But it's not that hard to me because once it makes sense to you, once you resonate with it and you're yes, then it's pretty easy to shed. You just need to be conscious, I mean, to me, all of this, so many years of this, go back to that line by Audre Lorde. You can bring down the master using the tools of the master. The master will always outdo you. The master doesn't give a shit if the new, leader or trillionaire is a woman or, a person of color or whatever our current little categories are. So long as the rules are followed.
You need a full paradigm
shift. Hierarchy is honored. That's it. That's what,
Yes, exactly. To me, it's kind of what my work ends up being about. Like, how do we have a full paradigm shift? How do we like grow our imaginations enough? To me, like I think I think everyone has like a place in like that journey, or like that thing we're trying to do. And like for me, it's like I think my role is to use like at least one of my roles to use like language to first remind us that the system that we have in place is already inhumane, whether that be through being funny or engaging or dark or whatever. It's like remind us that if we actually looked at it, we already don't agree. Some people have to we have to get reminded of that, and then to be like, but also each of us individually through our imaginative abilities have the ability to create something better. And it's not like I think we get disheartened by like, well, it's so much. It's like, it's us. So for me, that feels really connected to like my creative purpose, to how can I remind myself and others that we can do something better.
Yeah, hallelujah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was one of my questions that I was going to get to, your creative purpose. So shift the paradigm.
It's and usually it's like through like particular institutions, like because all there's different hierarchical systems. Race is another one of them. Like race is one I'm obviously concerned with. So I'm like, look at all these ways this manifests in this and obviously because we know that these different systems intersect with each other. So the novel I've just done, it deals a lot with the carceral system and how criminalization is like a very visceral and baseline and important one that I think needs to be thought about with a whole new type of nuance, and we need a paradigm shift.
Yeah.
And so that's why I wrote about it.
Good. Yeah. No, I mean, first of all, where is the rehabilitation aspect to it? Nowhere. and then, even if you go, I like when we get overstimulated and distracted by details, I like to go to the start of things, and the start of policing, at least in this country, is very much, getting the slaves caught and sent back to their masters.
Yep.
So, that's like very existential, and it does need like a thorough rewrite.
Also, it doesn't work.
Yeah, it doesn't work.
Like even if like you had no humane element about it, which you should care about the humans. These are all humans. It also isn't the deterrent we hope it to be, because all these things we're so afraid of still happen. All these things that were issued as murder, these assaults, all of it is still a part of the culture. And so the prison as we have it it's not working. So, I think abolitionists, they say like where life is precious. And right now in our system, life is not precious. So, and the public or whatever, the outside world, it recreates what the system or the institution deems okay. Because the only difference between what happens outside and inside, meaning prison inside and outside, is like inside there, it's like they're bad and the government said it's okay, so they can be tortured. But outside the world, if you see if that's what's on the table, that's what's on the table. So for me, it's really that feels important to me, because I think even good, reasonable people have like subscribed to the idea of like some of us deserve to be tortured. And I think that if we can like address that's like a good, almost like bottom layer to cleanse and then go up from there. So that's why that's why I chose that as like, that's not why I chose it. That's why the book, I think, forced itself to be written.
Yeah. Well, that happens. Yeah. And I mean, I don't know if you taught in prison. I taught in prison a couple of times on a couple of different states in my life, and it is, it's so painful to just go through those gates and be like searched and live behind your phone and have no AC and have no like accountability to the outside world. I mean, that in itself, every time, you go in and that you can get out, you're there because you've chosen to, right, just as a witness. But even it doesn't make a difference, like that existential fear. Like I always would get like goose flesh, the dread of going, almost to the underworld, because what we take for granted cannot be taken for granted, and things can be taken away from you. Everything is a privilege there. So even the fact that I was allowed to teach, that could be revoked anytime by the warden, right? So and anything could be considered suspicious behavior. And again, taken away, and students, could be like sent to isolation for nothing that I could understand. So I think that we forget that there's a huge chunk of population who is out of context, who are being kept out of life, and we are okay with that. Like, we let that go on as if it's not happening.
It's terrifying for a lot of reasons. You think about, like, we know for sure of the object abuse that happens between prisoners, but also like guards to prisoners. All those guards, they're not just in the prison where they're obviously partaking like a very, like, it feels like, a self-contained fascist space, a self-contained evil space. You can't contain evil like that. They go home, right? There's no way.
Yeah, there are women.
There's no way it doesn't like leak out there. And then now look what they've inspired and infected into their own families. And then how that continues all the way out. It's just this, you can't just have like, okay, we accept this evil, but it's over here. You can't, if we're that easy, the world would be a lot more simple. You can't just have a place where it's okay to be evil. You have to change the whole thing and inspire something that is not evil. Again, it's not like something I think is going to be easy, but like, if love can be the motivator and not fear, it can be a very different space.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, if there is a sense of empathy or, common humanity, like our shared humanity to begin with. Yeah, exactly. Instead of like,
if we remember.
Yeah.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
No, yeah. Instead of like the otherness, this kind of impulse we have, which is very lazy. It's just emotionally lazy, I think. Right? To like, categorize something we don't recognize as other, and then we don't spend time with it. We just move on, and that's really a death sentence to whatever that other is. A foreigner, someone who speaks or dresses or looks or behaves differently, anything we're not familiar with yet.
Exactly. I think prison and police, as they are like emotional and also like philosophical and moral crutches that have made us like completely unable to walk. There's like and the otherness again is like, I agree so much. Once we buy into this paradigm of some people can do things and then it's okay to strip their humanity away, once that's on the table, you don't get to control where that happens. Now, once it's on the table, oh, surprise, surprise, it's mostly Black people we do it to. It can't be on the table. Oh, once it's on the table, surprise, surprise, look how women are being treated. You already put it on the table. Like, it can't be on the table at all. And that's scary because it's like a self-cleaning oven, because its existence,
like a self-cleaning oven, yeah.
The mere existence of prison keeps us from having to think about an alternative to prison.
Yeah,
it's already there.
Yeah.
The building is already there. Throw them in there. We're scared now. It's really scary. It's really dark. It pulls on our darkest, worst impulses, which are real. And I like to honor those pain of loss, real pain of being violated and victimized. Those are real things. But I think that if we could just change our attitude towards quote unquote criminals, to being like, those are people that we failed at some point. At some point, our system wasn't loving enough.
Oh yeah, right at the beginning, sometime, that happened. All that happens like so early on, And,
yes.
Yeah, and also of course, like the privatization of prison that has gone on, in America, is heartbreaking because, they make more money. The more abusive they are, the more profit they make. Like we're, in my country, yes, it's like only 9-10 million people, but prison is run by the government and it's local, and the local people go to the local prison, right? If they break the law and get caught and get sentenced, if they don't like run away to the mountains. And of course, there's no death penalty, so that makes a difference, But, there is just more sense of something that your mind can comprehend, There is a boundary within which all of that happens, a boundary of humanity. Like Socrates went to prison and chose to take the hemlock. I mean, I think he was wrong. He wanted to show, however, that we all need the law to go by the one law, and we need to change the law rather than our obedience to the law. I get it. But my point is, we have these fundamental stories of imprisonment and liberation and re-imprisonment in our culture, in our creation myths, in our history very much, right? So there is an aspect of it that's considered normal to life. But here we have stopped all that, We don't talk about the narratives, the stories of people who went in and it's not part of our daily conversation. There aren't enough people we know. We're so socially compartmentalized, so that most of the people who have been to prison go back to communities that are isolated and kept away, amongst themselves. And to me, that's so much about money, and much less about really otherness. But otherness is what's used, by the system to keep the boundaries. To keep the boundaries.
Yeah. And absolutely. To me, our system, both prison and police, it's to disappear individuals. Which means we don't have to disappear systemic issues. We don't have to disappear poverty. We disappear the poor. We don't have to disappear mental illness. We disappear those who are suffering from mental illness. And like you said, it's this intellectual but moral, philosophical laziness, because those are complicated, dark issues that will force us to confront the fact that in all of us is a capacity for terrible and also greatness. But we aren't willing to do it because it's difficult and it takes resources. And also, if you didn't have sort of the threat of death looming over you, who would participate in this system?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the scare tactics. Yeah.
But other than that, everything's great.
What's the title of your book that you pretty much finished the draft?
Yeah, it's a secret. I can't give it out.
Oh, suspense. Okay, then. Well, I will update the podcast when it comes out. How is that? Yeah.
Yeah, because it might change. We're still seeing. I mean, I don't think it will change, but I don't want to get people too excited,
Yeah, I think that's great, though. I think it's something that has to be said, and I'm glad you're doing that work. I mean, I know you're a fellow traveler.
I'm trying.
Yeah. I felt it when I saw you. We didn't have time. There's so many people I knew, but I just recognized you, on a psychic recognition.
Yeah, I do too. This was in Miami, I guess.
Yeah, it was in Miami. Yeah.
Exactly. It's really funny how it's really funny because me too. But
Yeah. Next time though. Now.
Yeah.
Next
time I'm trying to let you know.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, no, we're gonna definitely keep this conversation going. I think it matters because we're so alike and we're in such harmony, and yet in the eyes of the average person we seem so different, but we're the same. We're the same. So I love that. Yeah.
I mean, I'm honored that you say that because to me that feels inspiring because again, like you said, like I was saying earlier, some of the decisions and leaps you've taken to me are really the goal. So that's really cool. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I'm glad that I was here to give you this message from the universe. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think that's good. I mean, we could talk about writing process, and we could talk about how the people self-publishing and the changes in the publishing industry. And we could talk about a lot, but I just love how real this has been, about our humanness.
I love this.
Yeah.
I hope it's okay, because I love this.
Yeah. And I'm feeling complete. I want to read the first 2 sentences of Friday Black, because I think it's just one of the good openings, a good opening. Fela, the headless girl, walked toward Emmanuel, her neck jagged with red savagery. She was silent, but he could feel her waiting for him to do something, anything. I just love starting with the headless girl. So I had to honor that opening because I'm very fond of first lines that grab you and you're like, whoa, To me, being named Eurydice, she's Orpheus, the head of Orpheus, which, by the way, came on the Aegean and washed up on the shores of the island, right where I was born. I was born on that cove. So again, like you are, these stories, of the headless heads that are the oracles, that bring you messages, are many thousands of years old. They're bigger than like you and me and our current identity, right? And when I read that, I'm like, wow, it's Nana, but also it's like other wisdom speaking, and that, right. And that's just like the beauty of it, that it's not just an individual voice. It's just all the stories coming through being retold. And I appreciate that a lot. Yeah. That you're open that way.
I appreciate it so much. I think when we're doing it at the highest level, you're hopefully like yourself, of course, but you're channeling from source, some higher, from that. And to me, that's what you're really trying to do. Just be there to channel the real thing. And hopefully, some of the stories, you get some of that feeling.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. Okay. Well, thank you, Nana. Thank you for your time. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for being with me. Lots of love to you and everyone out there. Thank you for listening. I love you. And until next week, keep speaking sex, keep speaking lit, keep speaking art.
All of it.
Keep this going. Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
If I could make love incessantly, I would be God.